Hello, my name is Miles, and I'm your host of Stop Stigma, Start Healing, the raw and uncensored podcast where we talk openly and unapologetically about our lives as trans, lesbian, bi, gay, queer, and HIV positive humans. Our goal is to stop the stigma that prevents us from getting the healthcare we deserve. Each episode will feature real people in our community in conversation and storytelling. And my disclaimer is the experiences shared here are valuable and important. They are based on the lives of those in this space and some of you who are listening. Prepare to be educated, shocked, seen, triggered, and informed. No matter your response, keep the conversation going. Start healing. So welcome back to Stop Stigma, Start Healing. I can't even remember the name of the podcast. And for those who listened to season one, all 10 people, we did an episode in the first season called Religion Recovery. It was well listened to, and there are just more stories that continue to need to be shared for folks out there who are listening. And so I brought back 3 guests for another episode of our podcast called Religion Recovery. And we'll go around the room, have you introduce yourself, first name and pronouns, and just give us a basic introduction of who you are and what you want the folks in podcast land to know about you. And I'm looking at you, so you go first.
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Nicholas. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am a case manager at Equitas Health, and I also co-facilitate Religion Recovery Support Group with Miles.
Just outed me. Nice.
I'm Lauren. I use she, her pronouns, and I grew up in Campus Crusade for Christ. It's a missionary organization that's worldwide, and more specifically, my parents were involved in Athletes in Action. And yeah, I do triage at Equitas Health. I also like reading and writing a lot and art, and I do Muay Thai, which is like a combat sport.
Yes, you can beat us up.
Yeah, I mean, you just watch it over there.
Well, it's my turn. Okay.
Who is this guy?
I am Maiko. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a local entrepreneur and artist here in Columbus, Ohio. And yeah,
Good. More to come on your story, I bet.
more to come.
Yeah. Well, so let's start with you. So and I'm going to ask everyone to go around and answer the same question, but talk to us about your involvement with religion, sort of how it started for you, and we'll get into more like where you are with it now. But what was it like for you growing up?
Well, how it started for me was a few ways.
Yeah.
I had a mother who sent me to church, and then I had another side of my family where like we basically lived there. My godparents are pastors, so yeah, that was real heavy, like part of my life. So it kind of went a couple of ways. I was raised, Christian, like formal Christian, non-denominational. So we had a lot of rules, but we also had a lot of wiggle room for certain things. So that was interesting. Anything else you want to ask?
Yeah. I'm curious about what these rules are and what the wiggle room is.
So the wiggle room is where a lot of, especially for like African Americans, we tend to be very Old Testament when it comes to our beliefs and like how Christianity goes. I was raised very contemporary. I attended Rural Harvest Church for a long time. So we had a lot of freedom where we didn't have to like dress up formally and like, things like that. But then there were still those, the stigmas of Christianity where like, homosexuality, different alternative beliefs and things like that you weren't allowed to have or supposed to have. Actually, I have on a Britney Spears shirt, but I wasn't allowed to listen to secular music at all up until a certain part of my life. So that's why I take a lot of pride in my music knowledge, because I wasn't supposed to know it. So yeah, that's where there was kind of like a great divide for me, because I had a little bit of liberty, but there were still those strict standard formal rules I had to follow when it came to religion.
How did you sneak in the secular music? I'm curious.
So I have this classification of music called school bus music. And it's the music that you listen to when you're driving down the street on the school bus, because that's the only time I could hear things, or I would hurry up and get home and watch BET really quickly just to catch a couple videos. TRL was my babysitter.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was me sneaking. So I just caught it in the world as I went along. It made me a heathen. No, I'm just joking.
It's very relatable. That like listening to stuff on like secular music on the bus for sure. Yeah.
The safe space, the school bus.
Right.
The school bus.
Said
At like
nobody.
7 in the morning, like falling asleep, but also like just Justin Timberlake playing.
Right, screaming the Lance
Yeah.
Morissette at the top of your lungs.
Yeah.
Lauren, how about you?
Yeah, so like I said, I grew up in Campus Crusade for Christ. And yeah, it was my parents' job. And so our like full income was through like people supporting us from churches. Yeah, and I feel like my whole life up to when I was 18 was as close as you can be to God, the better. I mean, and it made a lot of sense to me at that age because, you know, if you're like talking about the God of the universe, like, of course, everything you do should be as like oriented towards something like that important as possible. And so, yeah, it was like very sheltered, very, yeah, I was really only involved in Christian activities and in like Christian social groups and stuff. I feel like becoming friends with non-Christians was looked down upon, and I'm sure people would be familiar with the term, like they would call it being unequally yoked, you know,
Yes.
with like a non-believer. And the thought was if you were too close with somebody and you weren't trying to like witness to them, that it would drag you out of your beliefs. And so, yeah, I think those kinds of relationships were discouraged. So, yeah, I mean, my life was very centered around just increasing faith and going on missions trips. And yeah, that was kind of my whole life, up until, again, I was like in college and I realized there's a wide world out there, you know, that wasn't my family. But yeah, I think that kind of is a general picture of what it was like. Sure. I was happy, there was lots of love, but, you know, sort of turned out that it's only as long as you obey closely that, you know, kind of existed.
Very conditional love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Conditional community. How about you, Nick?
Yeah, so grew up with parents that were divorced. So mom's side of the family, mom grew up Mormon. Mom's whole side of the family is still practicing Mormon. Dad's side of the family is Presbyterian. Stepmom's side of the family is rural southern Oklahoma, non-denominational Christian, if that kind of puts a pin in it and gives an idea. Kind of grew up living with my mom. She was very removed from religion, agnostic as am I, but kind of had to go to church when I was at my dad's, and we went on the weekends, and then kind of got more involved when I moved to moved to my dad's house for high school after I came out, and then got involved with the youth group and kind of started forming friends in the youth group that were super supportive of who I was. Whether or not the church was supportive, that was another question. Also went through some very hard Christian counseling, almost conversion therapy, not really conversion therapy. Like there's like a thin line, like if it was or wasn't, type of a situation. And then sometimes I would go, sometimes I wouldn't. If I didn't go, I didn't get to go to youth group. If I did go, I got to go to youth group. So that was kind of a punishment back then. Now I will say my parents are 100% supportive of what I do, who I am, this past 2 years. So I'm from Canton, Ohio, which is kind of like Stark County area. We just had our first 2 prides last year and then this year. Last year, my stepdad or my dad and my stepmom came. And then this year, my dad worked a booth for his work. and was there the whole time.
You're revealing the happy ending at the end of the podcast. So I should have stopped you and
I
said,
was going to say, my bad.
We gotta build the
Yes.
the
Should've
energy,
stopped.
The dramatic tension.
Yeah.
Then you come out with that at the end. How
Yeah.
awesome it was that your dad worked at Pride with you. So
Wow.
I'm curious about earlier in your lives. What were some of the, I'm going off script a little bit. So what were some of the earlier nods or times in your faith communities where LGBTQ things were brought up? Like, not, this is like before you came out, but like when things you were noticing, like, we're not supposed to like that, or that's different, or that's other, or was that maybe it was embraced from early on? I don't know.
Do we have an order we're going in?
No, no, I'm not. Yeah,
Okay, so I'm just gonna say it. I've been gay since I was 4.
sure.
And I didn't know exactly what it looked like per se in the world, but I've always known that I was different, and I've always known, for me, my parents didn't necessarily tell me I was wrong, but the world did.
Yeah.
Religiously, the world did. Like my stepmother actually took me to a form of conversion church.
Okay.
So there used to be a small church on the west side of Columbus that they would have a service like separate of, the time of day that formal church would happen. And it was like, I was like maybe 9 or 10. And I was in a room full of, we don't have a look, but I was in a room full of, us. and you could tell because it was the 90s. So, that's when things were really black and white with it.
Yep.
Speaking of, I was probably the only black person in there. And it was like they were praying the gay away. And I had, at that young age, I don't know if, Caucasian churches do this, but deliverance services. Like I was probably the only 9-year-old being delivered.
What is that? I'm
It's where
Catholic, so I
they
don't even
pray
know
the
what that is.
demons out. It's like a stigma or exorcism.
An exorcism to exorcise the gay.
Yeah, so I was like the only one who probably had like an apostle come from Texas to specifically do that, because my stepmother was very like, don't stand like that. Don't be that way. That's not of God, So when that's what I got to hear most of my life. That's actually probably why I couldn't listen to secular music. So
because they were already identifying that you were
Some like deviance.
they had to bring in
Yeah.
the big kahuna, right? To like,
yeah, but you never
Get the
know
big
at that
devil.
age. Like I didn't know what gay was. I just knew I was different. You know what I mean? Like, so for me, that's like probably like 9 is where I started to hear that who I was wrong.
okay.
In the eyes of God,
Yeah.
specifically,
You want to go?
Sure. I mean, for myself, it was kind of never really like frowned upon per se. I will say I have, on my mom's side, on the Mormon side of the family, as I call them, I have an aunt who I have always presumed to be lesbian, and that was kind of...
Oh, she listening?
I don't know. She probably is not listening. She's
one of the
probably
10.
in like her 70s or 80s now. But she has had a life partner that they've lived together forever, and it was Aunt Doral, and I'm blanking on her name, whatever her name was, and that's how you knew them as, and our family just kind of always accepted it. So that was kind of the one slight hint I kind of had at what gay was before I knew what it was and had like something to put to it, and that I was. Nothing really in the church besides once I started going to youth group in like high school, because I wasn't too active in the church. I kind of always zoned out and during service and everything.
It's kind of boring. It's a little boring.
As kids do. We all have very little attention spans at that age anyways. But
I was mature.
I went to church camp in the summers. I went on mission trips with the church. And there's also like a whole thing on TikTok now. I can't remember who I follow, but she talks about the almost like the youth group formula, how they build you up, and then they tear you down and talk about everything that's wrong with you and how it's not okay.
Yes.
And like there's like a formula to how they build and how they do like their camps and retreats and things like that. So they get you to have these raw emotions and think that there's something wrong with you, and then you try to work with somebody and pray.
So what I'm understanding, Nick, is that you're saying that you weren't getting any messages from your faith community until you hit youth group.
Yeah.
That there was anything wrong. And then once you entered youth group, that's when your parents thought, oh, therapy, or was it the youth group people that were like, therapy is the way for you to go?
I think it was kind of a mixture of both. We went to a very big church in high school. I think we had 2 separate youth groups. We had one that met on Tuesdays and Thursdays nights, and one that met on Monday, Wednesday nights, if that says anything, how big our church was.
Yes. It's like a mega church.
Kind of a mega church, not like a small version of a mega church, if it could be a mega church. It's like a mega church wannabe, but it's not.
A micro mega.
Yeah.
Did it have a
micro-mega.
coffee shop?
Did it have
That's
It had like a bookstore
Okay.
ATM.
All right.
and like a preschool, if that is any.
That's pretty big. I mean, that sounds pretty big.
It was a big building, but it wasn't like mega church big. Like we have a couple mega churches where I'm from in Stark County that are bigger than the church that I went to in high school, that I had friends that went. But yeah, like youth group, it was fine. And then had first relationship my senior year, then that caused some issues, and that was kind of.
You're leading into the next question, so I'm going to stop you there so we can hear from Lauren, and then we're going to talk about when things collided, which I think is what you're heading into.
Yeah. I remember distinctly having a crush on this one Sailor Moon character that is she's butch, and there actually is a lesbian couple in Sailor Moon, but in the American dub they make them into cousins, which is also super weird. It makes it look very incestuous. So
Wow.
I don't know, it's weird that they thought that was a preferable alternative to the actual but I remember like one time my parents were like, we should all watch the like Sailor Moon movie together. And I, at the time, didn't really understand why, but I had like a tantrum, against watching it because if you watch Sailor Moon, like there's a lot of scantily clad women in that. And I feel like I had a reaction against like, they can't see this because there's something about it that I like that I don't know how to identify, or that's like forbidden for me to like enjoy about this or something. And then, there's another distinct memory when I was in maybe 7th grade where I was down in my basement, and I don't even know what prompted this, but I just thought, I like women, and that's not something that I can ever say to anybody or like express. That's like something that just I can't let get out. And so I have those two pretty distinct like feelings of difference. But yeah, I did a pretty good job of like repressing it. It wasn't something I like pursued until again I got to college. And so I knew gay people. We would like talk in hushed tones about so and so's son is gay, and it was always like a tragedy for that family. And so I think that was kind of my reference point to it was like just something that deviants in a family did. You'd hear stories, but I didn't really have any friends that were gay or anything like that. So it was kind of, hard for me to like picture myself as anything like that when that's sort of the only message you're getting,
I'll be your gay friend.
Oh yeah.
Was this the 90s?
Yeah.
And you mentioned 90s, like You no.
2000s,
yeah.
baby.
The 90s was
I
a rough
think-
time, man.
Well,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking of some pop culture things that were happening, like RuPaul's Supermodel came out, and that was a huge deal, and Ellen coming out.
I
on
got a
network
whooping over
TV.
RuPaul's Supermodel.
You did what?
I got a whooping over
Watching
RuPaul's
RuPaul's
Supermodel.
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
Man.
yeah. So I was like wondering how that might have impacted some of those
Yeah.
big
Pop
gay
culture,
moments in the
yeah.
90s where it really started hitting pop culture.
We were really like he said, very tuned out of pop culture. We thought like in the world but not of it. You kind of steer clear
That's
of
exactly
secular
how I
culture.
was taught. Like,
Yeah,
you'd
because
be
it's
in the world,
broken,
but not
it's
of it.
sinful. Yeah, that's definitely how I felt.
So what was the collision like? When did religion and your identity come to blows? And I'm not looking at anyone to go first or go next. So I'm just looking out into the world. Whoever wants to go
Take it away
first.
since you
Okay.
started talking about
Sure.
knowledge.
Yeah. So I was very like, I was very good at being religious and being well behaved. I think I was my whole life, and then got to college and liberal education. Just kidding, but
One thing Ohio is good for.
it definitely like made me realize that other people believed as fervently as we did in other things. And so maybe that sounds really obvious, but I just don't think I'd met like a Muslim person who really believed in their religion before strongly, or, some other people that have different ways of thinking, but it wasn't, why is ours the only way if other people believe just as strongly in something different? So I think that really struck me when I got to college. Pretty early on, I met this girl. And I was like, she's really cool, and I like want to hang out with her, and maybe like bring her to Christ. I don't know.
Oh,
Or something.
Equal,
something,
or
yeah.
was that the equal yoke thing?
The
or-
unequal, yeah. No, I mean, I don't know. It was a crush. I was very, very attracted to her. And it turns out she was for me too. We were both like, oh, neither of us have plans on Valentine's Day. We should like hang out. So that's very funny. But yeah, like it just we started going out, and it didn't feel like wrong and like unnatural to me. And it didn't feel sinful in the same way I felt like guilt about other like sins I would commit.
yeah.
And so at that time, I was like, I love this girl, and I'm really into her, and I'm very happy. But it's conflicting, I knew, with like something, because my family's like very biblically literal. And so everything in the Bible is very literal for them.
You thought you were going to get stoned.
Yeah, I mean, by some people, certainly. But I started seeking like spiritual guidance from different like pastors and religious figures and stuff, because I was like, I just want to understand. I know the Bible says being gay is wrong, but like, why does God think that? And I wanted to understand. And so eventually I shared with my youth pastor at my like church I grew up in. I told him that I was dating a girl and I needed help. I needed like spiritual guidance. And then he called me the next week and left me a voicemail. And on the voicemail, it was like early, I was just waking up. I got this voicemail in the morning. And it said, hey, I spoke with the elders of the church. It was the pastor, obviously. He said, I spoke with the elders of our church, and basically you're going to need to come out to your parents or we're going to tell them. And so I was very freaked out by that. And and so I did, like a day later at dinner, and it went just so bad. And it just continued to just go really, really bad. So yeah, that was, I feel like my whole life changed that day.
Yeah.
Definitely. And they didn't react well. They proceeded to call my entire extended family and tell all of them. And so it just all in one like fell swoop, like everybody in my life knew this thing that I was honestly kind of just seeking spiritual advice for at the time. So it kind of caused like you have to make a decision,
Yeah.
in your life. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of the collision point,
Yeah.
really.
That's really big.
Yeah. And at that time, I really tried to give it my due diligence because my parents felt very, very betrayed by this, and that I would leave religion so readily, in their opinion. And they were really hurt by that. And so I like cut off contact with my girlfriend at the time, and I just was like with them for like a couple of months, just doing everything that they wanted me to do to like try and ease some of the schism that had just occurred. But it just, I don't know, I think it did more damage than good, to be honest. It was a really awful summer. And yeah, it's just kind of tumbled since then. So,
Thanks
yeah.
for sharing that. And, I've heard parts of your story before, and it's incredibly impactful.
Thanks.
So.
It's so interesting. Like, my story is like vastly different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because for me, like I said before, like my parents didn't tell me I was going to hell. Everyone around us told us that I was going to hell. So as a black man, I'm an anomaly. Like I was raised by my father, like by hand. So I've always had like a male influence in my life. The stepmother that I'm talking about is like one of his wives. So I went to church even while I was, out here and like experimenting and finding things out for myself. Now, the one thing that I did do that was very strict for me was I was not having sex.
Oh.
I came out when I was 15, but I was not going to have sex because I was taught that like if you keep your virginity, you have something that no one else is going to ever be able to get back. Like I was really big on that. But when I came out to my father, he just looked at me and said, well, you're my son and I love you, but I'm just worried about how the world is going to treat you. I don't know if you've ever seen Queen Sugar, the show, but one of the reasons why I love that show is because the little boy, he carries around a Barbie doll, and his dad, as rough and tumble as he looks, lets his son carry around a Barbie doll. I had a Cabbage Patch. I had a little black Cabbage Patch, and we had a deal.
Cabbage Patch.
I couldn't take it to school with me,
Yeah.
and I couldn't take it to church, but I could take it everywhere else. And my dad would have my back 100%.
Wow.
So, but with that, people will wait until your protector leaves the room so that they can tell you, because in the world, men don't know how to raise children, quote unquote. So they thought that my father was doing it wrong. So people couldn't wait to bring me back down to earth. Like, that's a girl's toy, and they waited until his back was turned where he wasn't available to protect me per se. And it was always people where if I had to say it, it would be my word against theirs. But here I am, this 10-year-old telling on a 50-year-old, So for me, when I was like 15, it was just like, well, I got busted like in a after hour or something like that. And so I felt like I had to tell, but my guilt, one, came from feeling like religiously I was going to get condemned to hell. But then also I didn't want my father to question his ability to be a man raising a man. So I took a lot of that on.
Wow.
And then when I did come out, my church family, not all of them, I want to be clear, not all of them, but everybody moved away from me. I'm sorry, I keep hitting the mic. Everybody moved away from me, so I didn't have to like run or hide or anything because nobody wanted to like, nobody gave a shit about what I was doing anyway anymore at that point, because I wasn't cleaning the church or I wasn't like leading praise team or like my priorities. They felt like my priorities were going to shift, so they just went ahead and shifted them for me. And that was a very lonely space. In real life, overall, I'm one of 11 children. So the side of the family where that was happening for me was the side that I needed the most. So I was trying to understand these things that I was going through, and then on top of the influences outside where these people want you to have sex, you know what I mean? Like, because I was in the world at 15. I
the pop
wasn't
songs.
at home. Yeah. But no, even after that, like they want you to do those things. And so for me, the intersect for that was they moved away from me, and I didn't have to like shut down, or like I didn't have an opportunity to try to cling. So when I heard your story, it's so interesting, the dynamic of it, because I never think about that. So thank you for sharing that with me.
What a heavy responsibility for a young 15, 16-year-old to take on. Like,
Yes.
that's a lot.
Well, I'm here.
Yeah, well, and you make so much more sense to me now, knowing that part of your story, because you're fiercely independent.
I try to be.
And you are a huge dad cheerleader. I mean, what I know about you is how much you love and care about your dad. So
That's my dude.
yeah.
I don't like anybody in this world but my dad. No, you're cool.
He sounds worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
Nicholas, how about you?
Um,
When did it collide for you? Because you started to tell us what you observed.
there's a couple different places. So kind of coming out for me, I was kind of forced out of the closet when I was a freshman.
In college or high school?
High school.
Oh.
In southern rural Ohio. I'm not going to name where, but southern rural Ohio, I'll say that. I was a dumb 14, 15-year-old and got on the Black and Yellow app and used a picture of somebody I went to school with.
Oh, you were catfishing folks?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You had
I was
apps.
a
Wait a minute. How old are you?
On Yellow Facebook?
Yes. And somebody found out that I was messaging the person, and they knew they knew the person that I was using the picture of. It was a whole deal. And then my mom, so to give reference, my mom worked at the school I grew up going to in elementary. And I was at the high school. Sheriff came to the school, and admin called my mom, was like, "Hey, sheriff's here for Nick." And she's like, "Oh shit." So admin was like, "Don't say anything until your mom gets here." So that's how I came out, kind of forced out, because I was young and dumb and stupid, and as we are when we're young. And looking back at it now, I probably wouldn't have came out if I wasn't ready, because I wasn't ready to come out then.
Because you were sort of forced out.
I
right?
was kind of
you
forced
were
out. I
busted.
would have I'd say probably given it like 3 or 4 more years, and I probably would have been at the point to where I was okay to physically and mentally come out. So when I came out and the news kind of spread through the school, I was the first out openly gay kid where I went to high school at.
Trendsetter, baby.
One of our coworkers, we worked together. He's one of the supervisors in prevention. I won't say his name. When we were at all staff, we were kind of talking with everybody. He's like, "Oh yeah, Nick was a OG gay at school. He's the trendsetter." Like, thanks. That's what I want to be.
Not my choice, though, right?
Not my choice,
yeah.
but so that was that. And then in high school, or when I transferred schools, because lost all my friends, rural Appalachia, Ohio, nobody likes gay people there, or they didn't used to. Moved to my dad's to finish up high school, got involved with the youth group that I was talking about previously, and met a boy that went to the high school in the town of the church that we went to, because I lived in the town right across the way, so we went to church the town over. And all my friends went to the school in the town, as I whacked the mic up, went to school in the town over. So that's how I kind of got to meet him. And then he was also coming out. He hadn't came out yet when we started like dating, and his family is Italian Catholic. Like, mom is like first generation Italian Catholic and was removed from the church because she got divorced. Kind of whole situation. They had to change their last name. That's a whole other story. So he came out when we dated. So that caused drama within the church. We had to end so much to where my family decided to leave that church in high school, and I also had to leave that church. So I lost a whole friend group in high school. So I kind of had to finish my senior year in high school without very regularly seeing my core group of friends that I had from youth group. So I kind of had to like make friends, more friends in high school, which I transferred into a high school where my graduating class was 400 people, which for me, coming from a class that's 80 people, that's a lot. That's like a big change for me.
That's a lot.
And moving there, I was one of only 2 out gay kids in my class, surprisingly at the time. So that was definitely a shock. And then that's kind of when like the worlds collided and everything. And you were talking about in your watching TV in your basement and moment in your basement. I'm of the Glee era, so I was a Glee head, as we used to call ourselves. And so my bedroom was in the basement, and I would sneak watch Glee because my stepmom didn't like it. So if she came downstairs, I'd like put the back flash button on real quick and turn on like, I don't know, like Nickelodeon or something. And that's kind of, once I finally started to see more representation of like myself in like the media, I'm like kind of hit home and like, okay, I am. And I kind of started to learn to accept myself and things like that.
That's crazy. The only representation I had of myself wasn't even a representation of myself. It was Pedro from The Real World. Like, that's
God.
it.
Oh my gosh, yes,
Like,
Real World.
For me, that's it.
Yeah,
like, there
yeah.
were no openly gay black people.
Yeah.
And RuPaul, the world was still trying to figure out RuPaul.
what
So
he
RuPaul was.
there's such a
was.
generational gap. You had
Yeah,
Glee,
there
I'm
is. Yeah.
jealous.
I went because I was curious, like, who on Glee got your fancy?
I mean, I kind of identified more with Kurt, but my like crush was crap, what's his name?
Puck?
Half of them have died.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Sadly, half of the cast has died.
Is that true?
It
Yeah,
is.
What
A
the hell?
majority of the cast has died.
Oh my god.
It's like a curse. of
It
that
it
show.
is.
It's like Macbeth.
Finn was kind of like
Finn
my
was your crush.
That's
my
hilarious.
crush,
Yeah.
like my first celebrity crush. I
Aw.
always
Who was it?
butterflies. Finn. He was like the
lead
football
male.
player. The lead
Yeah, that's
male.
the one that died.
It was
like,
Kurt's
towards the end
brother.
of the
He
series,
died.
right?
He died of
during filming.
overdose.
Yeah.
And then what's her name was found in the bottom of a lake.
And Puck,
Puck.
he was arrested for this is not the Glee.
No, it's not, we're not the great podcast.
We won't go to. Yeah. So my next question for y'all is: who or where did you initially get support? Like the thing had happened, things were not great. Where were you? Where did you then sort of go to first to get that support?
I was afraid to get support at first. Even though my father and I had a good relationship, I come from the space where we just didn't talk about it.
Yep.
As long as nobody like effed me over, like we were cool. But I'd say the first person to really give me support, and I'm gonna name drop because people deserve their flowers, is when I was younger, I had some time where I had to leave home early because of some circumstances. But I got into the youth outreach program at the Huck House,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and there were 2 people, Kyra Crockett Hodge, and she still works there. And then there was a case manager named Charles Rutherford. And Charles let me practice my coming out speech on him. And he sat outside my dad's house so that I could come out, and like he would take me home just in case it didn't work out, like we go get something to eat or something. But those were the people who just never treated me like a label or a stigma. And my grandmother, because my grandmother had all the tea. So when I came out to her, she was like, "And don't let nobody make you feel like you're the onlyest one."
Wow.
She was old when I was
That's
little.
great.
So those were my support system.
Wow.
Like
that's
my
cool.
first real form of support was
The good peoples.
yeah,
Yeah.
the community really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were in the community. They are in the community.
Not the gay community,
But
the community,
the community
at large. Yeah.
Yeah.
People that I got support from, I tried to, yeah, so like that month I was mentioning where I was at home sort of doing the due diligence, I tried to get support from Christians in my circle. And the people that my parents wanted me to meet with were like ex-gay and like that pastor that outed me and some other like families in the church. Mm-hmm. And I thought that I could use those people for support, but it's just, yeah, it's when they like, care about you and don't want you to like, I don't know, kill yourself, but also think that you need to fundamentally change. I just kind of learned quickly that it's not actual support. It doesn't help. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I tried that for a while, and I would tell them, because there was like the piece of them wanting me to change, but also stuff that I felt like my parents were doing that was kind of cruel. And so they could empathize with some of it and say that does seem mean, but also like they're right, So it was like half-assed support. There was one girl that actually went to my church, and originally I brought her to Christ, which is kind of funny. She and I went to like high school together. Her name is Molly. And she was sweet throughout like my outing. I don't think there was anybody that was like just treated me sort of normal as she did. Mm-hmm. And that was really nice. She lives far away now. We don't really keep in contact, but it was really nice having her at that time. Just not, a lot of my female friends were just really weirded out by me, I think, after I was outed. And so she never treated me like that. And then as I went back to college, I sought a lot of different kinds of support from partners, and I feel like that was generally bad for the relationship if you're kind of like, thrusting trauma onto your partner. So then, like that partner actually that I mentioned, the first girl that I dated, she told me like, you've got to go to therapy. And so then I started going maybe winter of that year, and that really helped. Yeah, over time it really helped. So good. Yeah.
How about you, Nicholas?
I'm probably my mom. She was always supportive from day one, even with the whole scandal of being outed and things like that. She was very much supportive. She was, when I was growing up, she was a kindergarten teacher. Now she's a school psychologist. So kind of have like and I'm soon to be a social worker. So we're like kind of on the same wavelength of beliefs there. So she was super supportive. And then later in college, I started to kind of miss that part of church, like that supportive community. So I started trying to church hop again to kind of shop around and see. And mind you, again, I went to college in very rural Southern Ohio. So I went to a couple of churches that we knew people that went there that kind of invited me, that knew I was looking for like a new church home. And I really remember the first one I went to just happened to be their anti-gay sermon. And like 30 minutes in, I'm like, yeah, I'm leaving. I'm like, I'm not coming back.
As they say, the Lord works in mysterious ways.
And then I found, I forget how I found them, found an Episcopal church where I'm from, which is very supportive. They have priests and deacons that are of the queer community. So I got involved very heavily with that church when I was an undergrad. And then that was kind of a support system that I saw, like, it is okay to be gay and also kind of want something to do with religion. I wasn't really in it for like the religious aspect or like the connection to God. I didn't go for that. I kind of went for the community aspect of it and everything. And so I got involved with them, and we also started doing not like a Bible study, but it was like a theology on tap is what we called it. It was at a little brew pub.
Okay, so it's literally at a bar.
It's at a bar.
The Union Fandangle Christians.
Father was there. He dressed down, so he just had his collar on and then his street clothes. And then there was a group of us. I pushed it hard on campus and tried to get people from campus to come because we wanted to expand and do outreach in the college campus that I went to. And it was really good for the first year. Then also I had found in college, I had a really amazing mentor. I'm going to name drop her as well. Christina Baker, not Jones anymore. She was she was my English 1105 English teacher. I met my sophomore year, and we connected on like many different levels. And then she became the coordinator for the Women's Gender Equity Center. And so I got to work with her a lot with that. And she kind of helped be very supportive just of who I was, like openly supportive of who I was and me being gay, because I was at that point now to where I was kind of at terms with myself to where I was okay telling people that I was gay. Because I didn't come out to the rest of my family for maybe like a year, like 2 or 3 years after the fact that the whole incident had happened. But she was very super supportive. I still talk to her today. Actually, now they took the position from her from the college with the anti-DEI bill that's coming up through the state. They removed her from that position and switched her into a different position. So it was hard to see and hard to hear because my class fought for her to be in that position, and she was in that position for 8 years and gave so many people the love that she gave me to other people in the queer community, and not just the queer community in the ally as well. Just that loving support and that person that you went to if you had a bad day. Then I also had a couple people in high school too that I went to, my high school English teacher, and then my intervention specialist of all people in high school. They were like the two people I were able to go to when shit was hitting the fan at home. I could just go, and they're actively supportive.
Good. So a lot of support,
Yes.
sounds like, along the way. So we are going to take a short break, and we'll be back in a moment. Conversion, excommunication, and abuse are only some of the ways we've been harmed by religion. Find support and connection that helps you heal. Let's talk. Check out the many support groups, including Religion Recovery, at equitashealth.com. Start healing. Welcome back to Stop Stigma, Start Healing. We are in the final moments of Religion Recovery. I'm here with Maiko, Lauren, and Nicholas, and having really great conversation around religion and community and how we have come through that. And we're now kind of moving into, how are you getting your spiritual community needs met now in your life? What's important to you now in terms of where you are? Or is spirituality, religion, not a thing that is important to you?
Well, religion isn't so much important to me as much as spirituality is, because I think that without something to believe in, we have nothing, and we pour nothing into the things that we do. Formally, I'm a Nichiren Buddhist.
Oh.
So I find my spiritual relief is not even a religious thing. It's more of a practice thing. The law of cause and effect, what you put out, you'll get in return. But then also I get a lot of, I find a lot of solace and relief in what I do for my community, because there aren't a lot of gay Black men who are willing to come and meet the people like where they are. I'm not afraid to walk in any room and be entirely myself. I don't hide that. I don't code switch for anybody. And it's important that people get to see that. So I get a lot of joy and find a lot of comfort in knowing that who I am and what I put out into the world actually does make the difference for at least one kid in the world. You know what I mean? Or one person. So that's where my spiritual gain and my spiritual go comes from. Just knowing who I am and what I'm doing and the changes that it will make. So, yeah.
Hey, Lauren.
I'm not a Christian. And I struggle with Christianity because I think the way I was raised, we look down on every other sect so much that if I was to rejoin it, it would be really difficult mentally to like, I don't know. We were like, oh, those people don't even study the Bible. They don't follow it, as stringently as we do. And so like, they're like less committed or less like legitimately Christian or something. So I think I struggled with that for a while. And then when I realized I was leaving Christianity, I struggled with, well, why does anybody do anything in the world? And why do good things? Why do nice things? Why, I felt like I had to come up with a whole like reason for why I want to do things. And so that has been like an ongoing journey, figuring that out. And I have like tried to study philosophy to sort of get different like worldviews. And I feel like I've come to a place where I feel kind of proud of what I think and feel like I have kind of a ethics of just like sort of generally kindness now. Before, when I was like, why do people even do nice things? I was kind of resentful about that standard that we had, and that just made me unhappy acting like that. And so I feel like more at peace with where I am now. I'll say something that was like a huge piece in my healing was finding Muay Thai, as funny as that sounds. It's like kickboxing for people who don't know what it's like, but it's a community of people in my gym at least, and everybody is working towards a similar goal, and they all are very supportive, and there's just something like beautiful when you're all like working that hard together, especially like the adrenaline and the endorphins and stuff. It feels like really good to be there and be in community with those people. And so I think like doing that, and also like actually doing fights and sort of proving to myself that like I can go into like the ring and I can kind of enact my will on this and like be powerful. And that was really profound to me, and it made me really proud of myself in a way I hadn't been in like years. So that was really special for me.
That's a great. And you mentioned earlier that the Campus Crusade for Christ aspect that your parents were involved in was like athleticism?
Yeah, they were in Athletes in Action. They would basically be like a chaplain. So they would send like a team of volleyball players or basketball players or whatever to some country in the world. And then my either mom or dad would go and be like a chaplain on the team, and just sort of like help with logistics and stuff. And so, yeah, that was their role. AIA is like it goes all over the world. So,
but is that where some of this connection with fitness and body
that's a good
stuff?
question. I definitely remember when I was little praying that I could be tall, because all of the cool people I knew were tall, because I knew a bunch of like athletes.
Your prayers were answered.
They were, yeah, right?
For those in podcast land, Lauren has got some height.
I've got some height. I'll say I've got some height. I've got some legs.
Legs for days.
But I think I've always really liked fitness, and I like pushing myself physically, and I'm a big runner. And so
nice.
I feel like those activities for me have always been, I can channel things into it. I can channel emotions into it. When I was going through like, I was outed in, 2014. yeah, just like running and just getting away and just going a couple of miles by myself, like it just really made all the difference. And it let me like get out angst if I needed to, or something feeling unfair. And just like the feeling of moving forward in a direction was always like, as long as I'm moving, it's going to be okay. So I feel like that really helped, and I can channel a lot into like athleticism.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Nicholas, how about you?
So not really involved in any like religious community at all right now. I do identify myself as agnostic now. I've kind of come to terms with that. I kind of find that in all like the advocacy work that I do with work, as a social worker, we have like a very strong ethical guideline that we have in our profession. So I've kind of taken that, and those are my own ethics because I see it as a guide to being a good person, basically, is how I see the code of ethics for social work. And that's kind of how it was instilled upon me from one of my undergrad social work professors, really. And just doing a lot of the work that I do in the community with planning prides. I've been a part of planning 3 prides or 4 prides now.
It's awesome.
Both two first prides, and also working on a community board to open the first queer community center in the town where I live now. So kind of find that aspect in like the advocacy work that I do, and also through leading religion recovery.
Oh, baby, you were legendary. That's what that is.
Well, and you had mentioned that for you, it was much more about community.
Yes,
and
it is.
having that connection to community. So all of that makes a lot of sense for you.
Yeah, and like I never really had like a true group of friends until like a year or 2 ago, actually. And now I have a group of really good friends that we all plan Pride together. We went on vacation to DC like 2 or 3 months ago. And they've all been like a good form of support, and like having a core group of friends before, because I was that awkward gay kid nobody wants to be friends with in high school, or still even in like undergrad at some points where I went. But yeah, they've been like a huge support system. And then also doing religion recovery and kind of starting that, I kind of started that for myself, oddly enough, not to like brag or anything. It came from my group social work class in grad school. We had to make a support group from the ground up, and I was trying to look for a space for myself that was kind of led by mental health providers, but it wasn't. It was very much peer led and very few and far between. And they would meet, they wouldn't meet, like it went in ebbs and flows kind of. So I came up with the idea, and then ended up doing some of the research for it, and then connected with Miles, and here we are.
And I made you do it.
And he made me do it.
Sure, we can do it, and then make you do all the work.
Yes.
So, but it is a great space for folks to be able to come in and just connect with other people and tell stories and connect.
So is that what this is specifically, or is there another group?
So there actually is a support group that we hold called Religion Recovery.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really
And so
cool.
it's just a space for folks to pop in and connect. And
I'm proud of
yeah,
you guys.
I can attest, it's
We've
good.
come a long
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, that's Nick. That's Nick who created that. So it's about 120 degrees out here in Ohio.
Yes.
There is no such thing as global warming, but
Nope.
I think you could fry an egg on the manhole covers in the street. And you all came downtown to record this. I like to make sure that I give guests an opportunity to say the things that were important for you to say before we close the episode. So if there were things that you were like, gosh, I just want to make sure that this part of my story, or that this message gets out to that kid that in Janaden Hutton, Ohio, they hear this message. I just want to make sure that gets out there. The mic is hot. It's yours.
Well, I just want people to know, no matter what religion, no matter what creed, no matter what walk of life. The best thing that my grandmother ever told me was God shares his mercy seed and not his judgment seed. And no one has to sit in your seat. No one has to wake up you. No one goes to sleep you. So goes to sleep you. So you have to really remember, no one can judge you, but keep in mind you can't judge anyone else. The thing that we're obligated to is to understand and to listen and to be compassionate, because this world, like, even though we're moving towards a space of kindness, there's still not enough. There's still not enough.
Are we moving to a space of kindness?
I think so.
Was a thing.
Yeah, okay.
But maybe it's because I kind of curated an environment for myself where no matter where I go, and it's what you put out, you get back. But yeah, God shares his mercy seed and not his judgment seed. So across religions, that's true. So
I love your grandma's wisdom. How about you, Nick?
Yeah. So one thing I will say, final notes, final thoughts, whatever. Therapy is okay. It is an option. For myself, I don't see it. I'm not there yet. I'm not at that place to where I'm okay with therapy, just with my past and things like that. Hopefully someday I will get to that space. But it is an option, and we have those resources as well.
Yeah, I think it's hard when therapy is a tool, but it's also been used to harm you. So, so taking your time to warm up to that, I think, is totally acceptable.
That, and when you're also trained to be a therapist,
That is
therapy
an
is
interesting place to
also
sit.
an odd place to sit,
Yeah.
it's like drawing blood from a nurse, huh?
basically.
Lauren, how about you? You want to take us home?
Sure. I would say, if I could speak to my younger self or somebody in a situation like I was, that you should just be forgiving towards yourself and the way that you behave when things out of your control happen to you. Especially if you're young, because you're gonna make mistakes and look back and regret things and feel embarrassed about things, but it's so messy, for everyone. I feel like our stories are different, but they're all really messy and they're all really complicated. And so just be forgiving towards yourself and be compassionate for you're doing your best at the place you are at any time, and that's really all you can do. And hindsight's 20/20, but you can just as long as you're kind of focusing on, I would say, being kind to others at every moment and compassionate as much as you're able to, both towards yourself and others. I think that's a pretty good way to go about it. And yeah, do seek help if you need it, because we all do. So.
Great. Well, thank you, Nicholas, Maiko, and Lauren, for sharing your stories with us and adding it to the body of our work for folks to listen to. It's such important stories.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I really appreciate you coming out tonight and sharing those. And thank you. So
Thanks for having us.
yeah, with that,
Something healthy for the week.
pardon? Yeah,
Something healthy
Yes.
for
a
the
little bit. Yeah. I feel different tonight. It does feel different than when some of these end. So thank you.
Yeah.
I feel more kind. I want to be more kind as I've got the State House looming over my shoulder.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, that's another podcast. So anyway, thank you all, and thank you for tuning in.